When you think of a Mario Kart game that defined and shaped the childhoods of millions, there's probably one particular entry that comes to mind, and that's the ever-infamous Mario Kart Wii. This game was a big turning point for the Mario Kart series, just as much and arguably even more than its predecessor Mario Kart DS was. I mean, not only did it refine the ideas from that game, it also introduced so many more and truly cemented itself as a landmark entry in the series, still actively being played to this day. And only 3 short years after Mario Kart Wii's release, we would see yet another entry in the Mario Kart series, this time on the 3DS. And despite introducing just as much, if not more new concepts, tracks, and ideas as Mario Kart Wii, this handheld entry isn't remembered and cherished nearly as much as it. And today, I want to find out why that is, and if the 7th Mario Kart still holds up today. My name is Mariomikester, and welcome to a Mario Kart 7 retrospective. In this video, I'm going to try and answer one simple question. Is Mario Kart 7 bad? Released on December 4th, 2011 here in North America, Mario Kart 7 is the 7th entry in the Mario Kart series. Could you tell? Development for the game started in early 2010, with the main goal the team had being to finally implement the 2 big gameplay mechanics that were scrapped from Mario Kart Wii. That being the ability to drive your kart underwater and glide down from high places. But despite Mario Kart being one of Nintendo's most popular and best-selling series, Mario Kart 7 initially only began development with 8 staff working on the game, which was obviously not enough to get the game completed for the late 2011 release date they were shooting for. So, in order to speed up the development, Nintendo enlisted the help of Retro Studios, who had just finished working on Donkey Kong Country Returns, and had them co-develop the game alongside Nintendo. But instead of having Retro Studios help out on all aspects of the game, they were instead tasked with creating the returning retro courses that would be featured in the game, as a way of not only introducing this outside team to how the development process for a Mario Kart game works, but also what makes a good Mario Kart track from a design perspective, since they would be working with pre-existing courses. After Retro Studios was brought on board, development for Mario Kart 7 progressed remarkably fast, with Nintendo even being able to add a 3rd gimmick to the game, a new kart customization system that would eventually become a series mainstay.
Mario Kart 7!
Getting into the actual game itself, and starting off with the single-player mode, we have the character roster. Now, initially, the roster here isn't much, as is the case with most Mario Karts, with only the original cast from Super Mario Kart being playable here, with the exception of Donkey Kong Jr., who was replaced with regular DK. However, as you progress through each of the 150cc cups in the game, you'll unlock a new character upon winning each of the cups. You can unlock returning characters Wario, Rosalina, Daisy, and Shy Guy, but you also can unlock 4 completely brand new characters to the Mario Kart series. Wiggler, Metal Mario, Lakitu, and the Honey Queen from Super Mario Galaxy. I mean, honestly, Wiggler and Lakitu are really cool additions to Mario Kart. Hell, even Honey Queen is. But come on, Nintendo. Metal Mario from Super Mario 64? Surely there could have been a better, newer returning character to take this spot. Other than that, though, a pretty solid roster all around. Where things get interesting here, though, is in the kart selection. As I mentioned before, one of the big new gimmicks of Mario Kart 7 is the ability to fully customize your kart, down to the tires and glider it uses, instead of the much more limited kart customization we saw introduced in Double Dash that just let you choose the actual car and nothing else. In concept, I absolutely love 7's idea of a full-on kart customization system. I mean, just think of the possibilities it opens up. However, in execution, it's not perfect. In reality, 7's customization system is a double-edged sword in a lot of ways. Like on one hand, allowing all these different customizations with all these different stats gives more experienced players a much easier time creating the optimal build they want, but on the other, shoving all these stats down a player's throat, especially in an extremely casually friendly game like Mario Kart, can just downright confuse people, as it did with me when I was younger. And I mean, allowing players to create extremely lightweight, well-handling combos and vice versa almost completely invalidates the weight class of the character you choose, which for some may seem like a blessing as it allows them to choose whatever character they want, regardless of weight class. But at the same time, it almost fully removes some of the core strategy from Mario Kart that's been there since the very beginning. Personally though, while I can understand many people's gripes with the kart customization, I without a doubt prefer it over what we had before. I absolutely love how you don't have everything right away, and instead unlock things over time by collecting coins. It's such a great way to incentivize coin collection outside of the minor speed boost they give you. And it's always exciting to go into the kart selection screen and see what you unlocked. So overall, while the kart customization isn't perfect, it's still an incredibly cool new addition to Mario Kart, and something I still love messing around with to this day, in order to see what kind of crazy or just well-rounded customizations I can create. But while on the topic of just one of Mario Kart 7's new gimmicks, why don't we talk about the other two, gliding and underwater racing? Ironically, in all 6 Mario Kart games before 7, players were instinctively taught to avoid water, as in almost every case it was out of bounds if you tried to fully submerge yourself. However here, it's now fully encouraged, and in most cases entirely required for you to completely submerge yourself underwater, as it's now been turned into a core gameplay mechanic, being the central feature of a lot of tracks in the game. And with gliding, it's a completely new and original idea that opens up so many possibilities due to the verticality it offers. With it, you're no longer confined to simply just turning left or right. You have complete freedom and can go in any direction. And although there aren't too many tracks that take full advantage of gliding, the ones that do, like Woohoo Loop, Rock Mountain, and Maka Woohoo, show just how much fun this mechanic could be when it's executed right. And even the tracks that don't take full advantage of it still have incredible ideas and uses for the glider a lot of the time. Just look at SNES Mario Circuit 2. Here, the glider is used to simply launch you over another portion of the track. But if you go to the left, you can bounce off the wall here and cut off a sizable chunk of the track, which just feels so satisfying every time you do it. Returning back to underwater driving though, it isn't just a visual thing. Being underwater also changes your kart's controls, with some combinations excelling in water, and others not so much. These two mechanics are arguably some of the most game-changing mechanics Mario Kart has ever seen. Yet, for some reason, people seem to forget that they originated here and not Mario Kart 8. These are original ideas that genuinely change how you play Mario Kart, and I will always appreciate this game for introducing them. Something I haven't always appreciated some Mario Kart games in the past for, though, is their controls. To my surprise, however, Mario Kart 7 may very well be one of the best controlling games in the series. I don't know exactly if it's just the form factor of the 3DS and the positions of the buttons on the console, or just the controls in general being incredibly polished. It's probably a mix of the both. But I was just blown away by how great the controls felt when returning to this game. The circle pad works phenomenally for steering on the ground, underwater, and in the air. And while a bit small, the shoulder buttons work surprisingly well for drifting around the tracks. One of the absolute coolest parts of Mario Kart 7's controls, though, is the ability to go into first person and steer your kart by tilting the entire console. This isn't something you're going to want to be doing all the time, as the game obviously controls better outside of this mode, but playing like this occasionally, especially with the 3D slider turned up, can be a lot of fun. And is a nice little change of pace from your typical Mario Kart playstyle. I think it would be so cool to see something like this brought back in the future. Okay, so Mario Kart 7 introduced 3 amazing new mechanics to the series, added 4 new characters, and controls incredibly well? Surely its track selection isn't too great then? Wrong! Mario Kart 7 without a doubt has one of the most consistently good track selections in the entire series. Seriously, the selection of courses in this game is heavily underappreciated and not talked about nearly enough. I was so shocked to remember how many great Wii tracks made their way into this game. I mean, you got Coconut Mall, Koopa Cape, Maple Treeway, and even outside of the Wii tracks, you got some great DS tracks, N64 tracks, and just an absolutely stellar retro selection. Created by Retro Studios, of course. But, as you know, returning courses aren't what make a track selection memorable in a Mario Kart game. It's the brand new tracks that really leave an impact. So, let's take a look at all of them. Starting off with the Mushroom Cup, you've got an honestly pretty mid selection of tracks here. Those being Toad Circuit, Daisy Hills, Cheep Cheep Lagoon, and Shy Guy Bazaar. Obviously as a starter track, Toad Circuit isn't going to be the most insane and technical track in the world, but they definitely could have done a lot more than practically just copy what Figure 8 Circuit did from Mario Kart DS all the way back in 2005. But hey, at least this version of the track looks better than Mario Kart 8's version. Onto Daisy Hills though, this track is a pretty decent tutorial for the glider that also features some pretty fun course elements that at least make it somewhat memorable. The third track of this cup on the other hand, Cheep Cheep Lagoon, is a whole lot of nothing. The only purpose this track serves is to show off the underwater driving mechanic. That is literally it. There's nothing interesting about it, and it barely does anything with the underwater driving. It just shows you that it exists. The last track of this cup though, Shy Guy Bazaar, is actually a ton of fun, and really the track that saves this cup from being bad overall. Its aesthetic and vibe are so unique, and the creative course elements it has makes this one you'll not only enjoy replaying, but one you'll remember. With a start as bad as the Mushroom Cup, you'd probably be under the impression that every other Nitro Cup is just as bad or even worse than it. But fortunately, that is absolutely not the case, as Mario Kart 7's selection of brand new courses gets a lot better with the Flower Cup. Here you've got Woohoo Loop, Mario Circuit, Music Park, and Rock Mountain. And while Mario Circuit may not be the most interesting course in the world, the other three here definitely are. Woohoo Loop literally takes place on Woohoo Island from Wii Sports Resort and sees you, well, taking a loop around the entire island and seeing all its iconic landmarks. Music Park has this incredibly cool gimmick of incorporating the music of a Mario Kart track into the track itself, with piano and xylophone notes being added to the song as you drive across giant versions of those instruments, with hazards that even sync to the music. And the last track of this cup, Rock Mountain, takes full advantage of the glider, and honestly does a much better job than Daisy Hills ever could at showing off just how cool the mechanic could be when used right. I've always loved just shooting off this ramp and gliding down the mountain. Onto the Star Cup, this Grand Prix starts off strong with Piranha Plant Slide. I've always felt this track is incredibly underrated because its theming is just so cool. It's based off the underground levels from the original 2D Mario games, more specifically the original Super Mario Bros., and it does such a great job at translating the atmosphere and vibes of those levels into a Mario Kart track, while also keeping it unique and introducing some new elements, like the underwater portion at the end. I absolutely love how hard this track leans into the aesthetic of Super Mario Bros. As well. It really feels like I'm driving through a 3D version of a 2D Mario level, as weird as that sounds. But moving on, for the second track of the Star Cup, we have Wario Shipyard. Personally, I've never really been the biggest fan of this track, but I can respect how unique its layout and theme are. It actually takes really good advantage of underwater driving, and that's always going to be worth something. The jets pushing you around and driving through the sunken ship will always be fun, even if it's not my favorite course in the game. One track I am personally a fan of though, at least this game's version of the track, is Neo Bowser City. This course's atmosphere is incredible. For once, instead of a Bowser track taking place in a giant castle, this time it takes place in this futuristic but gloomy neon-lit city, full of so many twists and turns that are incredibly easy to mess up due to the constant rain pouring on the track. I really hope in the future Nintendo does more Bowser courses like this, because the castles do start to get kind of stale. Ending off this cup though, we have without a doubt one of my favorite Mario Kart tracks, just ever. Maka Woohoo. Similar to Woohoo Loop, this track also takes place on Woohoo Island. But this time instead of taking a lap around the island, you're now scaling its giant volcano, going through these caves, diving underwater, and once you reach the top, gliding down to the finish line. I've always loved this track because it just kind of feels like an adventure the whole time. I mean, you're climbing up this giant mountain on this iconic landmark. I still cannot believe we've never seen this track return. Same with Woohoo Loop as well. Just imagine how beautiful both of these tracks would look in Mario Kart 8 if they actually put in the effort to bring them back. On to the final batch of brand new courses though, we have the Special Cup, featuring DK Jungle, Rosalina's Ice World, Bowser's Castle, and Rainbow Road. And while DK Jungle and Rosalina's Ice World are both undoubtedly incredible tracks, with DK Jungle being the first true Donkey Kong themed track in the series, taking many elements from the Donkey Kong Country games, and Rosalina's Ice World being a beautiful homage to Rosalina in the Super Mario Galaxy games, the real star of the show here is Rainbow Road, and not Bowser's Castle, as this game's iteration of Bowser's Castle is just kind of boring. They honestly should have just stuck with Neo Bowser City here, because it is Bowser themed, and is leagues more unique and interesting than whatever they had going on here. Back to Rainbow Road though, I mean wow! I know I'm definitely not the first to say it, but they cooked with this track. After 6 Rainbow Roads across 6 games, with almost all of them taking place in space, for the 7th iteration, Nintendo finally took advantage of the fact that these tracks usually take place in space, and made it this entire adventure where you're drifting on the rings of Saturn, speeding across boost pads, landing and driving across the moon, and finally zooming through this rotating cylinder of boost pads and gliding to the finish. Everything about this track just feels like the perfect send-off to the new selection of courses in the game. You've got its incredibly uplifting music, the beautiful atmosphere, and the creative design of the course. I don't know if this Rainbow Road is my favorite, but I will always love it for pushing the limits of what a Rainbow Road can be, and truly making something unique. And that's all the brand new courses in Mario Kart 7. Although this selection of tracks isn't without its stinkers, Mario Circuit, Bowser's Castle, it's overall a very memorable lineup, with some standout additions that will always be fun to go back and race on. But racing isn't the only thing you do in a Mario Kart game. You can't forget about the battle mode. Or, maybe you could. Usually everyone does, but Mario Kart 7's battle mode consists of 2 modes with 6 courses. You've got Balloon Battle and Coin Runners as the 2 modes, and GBA Battle Course 1, N64 Big Donut, DS Palm Shore, Honey Beehive, Sherbet Rink, and Woohoo Town as the 6 courses. This battle mode doesn't do anything we haven't seen a battle mode in another Mario Kart game do, but it does achieve its purpose and is pretty fun. The only real downside here is that you have no option to do Deathmatch in Balloon Battle, so if you run out of balloons, you just respawn and lose points, instead of being out forever like it was in the older Mario Karts. Other than that though, Coin Runners is always fun, and the 6 courses they chose here are a blast to battle on. I especially love the inclusion of Big Donut from Mario Kart 64. The addition of the glider ramp allowing you to cross over a giant pit of lava in the center is great. So overall, while this definitely isn't the Mario Kart I'd go to first for its battle mode, it's also not the one I'd go to last. It gets the job done. Mario Kart 7 is definitely one of the more forgettable games in the series. I mean, everything it introduced was just brought into Mario Kart 8, and arguably done better, with nothing really left unique specifically to it enticing people to go back. Despite this though, it's very important to look at this game through the lens it was looked at when it came out. It had 3 amazing new gimmicks, an incredible retro nitro track selection, and was portable. This game set the groundwork for what Mario Kart 8 would be, and we should never forget it for that exact reason. This game wasn't the Mario Kart I would always be dying to play, nor is it the one I've made the most memories with. But just because this game hasn't left the same impact the rest of the games in the series have, doesn't mean it should be discounted or forgotten. There's nothing terrible about it. Sure, it's not perfect, but what game is? For a Mario Kart game on the 3DS, 7 achieves its purpose and then some. So, to finally answer the question posed at the very beginning of this video, is Mario Kart 7 bad? No, it's actually pretty damn good.